Alrighty, hello everyone. I'm Rosa and I am an addict. I'm sorry to use that overused trope, but I have this theory that actually all mathematicians are addicts. And the thing that I think we're addicted to is this really particular feeling. So there's this feeling when it's sort of a feeling of things kind of clicking, different things kind of coming together, and for this moment it seems like everything makes sense and you kind of get this glimpse into the connectedness of all things in the universe, and it's this really, really beautiful moment, and mathematicians are addicted to it. And the lengths they will go to get their next fix. Like a mathematician will work for years, tirelessly, endlessly to get their next fix of this feeling. And I think people who don't like maths, I think they just haven't ever had those moments with mathematics that have given them that feeling. They haven't had teachers who have allowed them access to that, or they haven't kind of had that opportunity to feel that way and have that kind of addiction inside them started. And there are definitely a lot of people who don't like maths. They love to tell me about it. So I'll meet someone at a party, tell them, oh, I do maths, and they'll be like, oh, I hate maths. Yeah, that's not actually, that's not even my least favorite response to that. Sometimes when I'm at a party, I tell someone I do maths, and they go, whoa, you must be really smart. That one makes me really uncomfortable. So I started responding with, yeah, but you should see my emotional intelligence. I don't have that problem anymore, I should say, because now I work at ScienceWorks. So I'll say, oh, I work at ScienceWorks, and that immediately gets me all the brownie points. I'm the coolest person in the world. They'll be like, whoa, you work at ScienceWorks. Hey, Jerry, come meet Rosa, she works at ScienceWorks. And I'll be like, you don't know me? You don't know anything about me. But I kind of miss having to work really hard to impress people. It's a bit too easy now with the ScienceWorks thing. Anyway, so how does a person actually come to love maths? Because it's not a thing you hear often. So that's what I'm going to talk about. I actually do also love physics and biology, but I've decided to focus a little bit more on the maths side today. I didn't always love maths. It's definitely been a slow growing kind of love in me. And I actually wasn't always good at maths either. So in primary school, maths is basically arithmetic, and I hate arithmetic. I hate it, and I'm terrible at it. And I remember this one time that I was really little, it would have been early primary school, when we started to, we were doing addition, and you know that thing in addition where you add the columns up to get the number that you're adding, and you carry the ones? What's carrying a one? That's my first thing. But also, I just really, really hated doing that, and I was very bad at it. And I remember talking to my brother, my oldest brother, you feel, and I was saying to him that I was having this problem because I knew how to add numbers in my head or in my own process. I had a way of doing it, but they kept teaching me this method that made no sense to me, and it just kept confusing me. And the more that they taught me their way of doing it, the more I was forgetting my own, and I couldn't remember anymore, and now I couldn't add things. And I told that to my brother, and he said something very lovely to me. He said, why don't you teach me your method, and then as you forget, I'll teach it back to you. Which I thought was super, super nice. But I remember I was really cut up about it. I was really upset because it was too far gone. I didn't even know what I used to do. I couldn't remember anymore. All I knew was that I couldn't do arithmetic. But my mum always, through primary school, I knew that I wasn't doing that well at maths. But she always said to me, Rosa, you're really good at maths. And I'd be like, but hang on, look at my results. And she'd be like, don't worry about your results, just trust me, Rosa, you are very good at maths. And at the time I didn't believe her. I was like, that's outrageous and ridiculous, but she won out in the end. So what happened in high school was that they got rid of numbers and we started doing algebra. And when we started doing algebra and suddenly I didn't have to do arithmetic, I started to realize that actually I was pretty good at this maths thing, like I could do it. And so I continued doing maths through high school, mostly because I was good at it, not because I actually really loved it. But the truth was that I had been good at and been interested in maths my whole life. And the reason that I'd been interested and good at maths my whole life was because of, I think, my dad. So my dad studied pure maths at uni, and I'd been exposed to mathematical ideas my whole life without really realizing it. We would do things like, we'd have discussions about logic and these kind of arguments about implications. We'd talk about classification and language, and I'd seen pictures by Escher and heard poems from Martin Gardner books and played with hexaflexagons. Does anyone in the room know what a hexaflexagon is? I was going to bring one, but it's at my parents' house, so I didn't have it. Okay, whatever. The point is, I've been exposed to mathematical ideas. I just didn't realise that they were mathematics at the time. It was a lot later. It was actually at university that I kind of put those things together. There was one thing in high school, though, that might have been an indicator of the mathematician I was to become, and it was this one assignment that I did on palindromes. So a palindrome is something that reads the same forwards as it does backwards. Like the word mum is an example of a palindrome. But there are numbers that are palindromes. They read the same backwards and forwards, like number 121 is a palindrome. So there's this thing that happens where you can take a number that's not a palindrome, and if you add it to itself backwards, then you get a palindrome. So if you add 123 to 321, you'll get a palindrome. And this works most of the time, but occasionally it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, then you just take that number and you do the same thing again. You take the resulting number, add it to itself but backwards, and you should get a palindrome. If it didn't work that time, then try doing it again. So I did this whole assignment, and the last question on the assignment was, do this with 3 more numbers to prove that it always works. Outrageous, right? I can see the outrage on your faces. Can you feel outraged? Even at my young age, I knew that trying it with 3 examples did not prove that it always works. Maybe in science, we try and make a scientific model and it's a good model, but in maths, that's not how it works. Like, if you want to prove something's true, you got to prove it's always true. So I could have picked 3 easy numbers and done it and handed my assignment in, but I was a bit stubborn and I decided to dig my heels in. So what I realized was that the times when this doesn't work is when you have really high numbers and you're adding them together, because then you get, if you add it up 2 digits and you get a number that's 10 or above, it breaks everything because of that carrying ones thing that I mentioned earlier. That kind of breaks it. So I decided to pick a number that went something like 998797898 and tried to do it with that number. And so I took that number and I reversed it and I added it and I didn't get a palindrome, and I tried again and I didn't get a palindrome, and I tried again and I didn't get a palindrome. And then I filled 2 A4 pages with every line being the next number you guess if you do it. And they were hard additions. It took me a ridiculously long time. And I got to the end, to the point where I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I am done with this. I have not gotten a palindrome. So I took it and I gave it to my maths teacher and I said, I did it about 40 times, I didn't get a palindrome, so I have no reason to believe that this is correct. That was my first venture into pure mathematics. I got to the end of school, and one other important thing happened, I think, in my maths development while I was at school. And that thing was that my boyfriend at the time, who's actually here tonight, hey Mark, bought me some of these. These are some spherical magnets. Have you guys ever seen these before? So they're these little spherical magnets that stick together, and I became obsessed with them. I started building all sorts of different things with them. I would play with them all the time. I'd make all sorts of different geometric kind of shapes, and that was my sort of first venture into geometry. And I ended up coming to understand all of these things about geometry through these little magnets that I wouldn't realize until a few years later at like third year university maths. Okay, so I decided to continue on with the Bachelor of Science. I loved biology, I loved physics, I had a mild distaste for chemistry, but I was quite good at maths. So I went into a Bachelor of Science degree, thought I was going to do physics and engineering and biology and neuroscience, all these different things, but the more maths I did, the more I came to love it. And one particular subject that really made me love it was this one where basically you start by defining numbers. You start by defining a number system, and then you prove one result after another. You work your whole way up to calculus. It basically taught me everything that we'd done in school, sequentially, and proving every single result along the way. So you didn't need to trust your lecturer on anything, everything was proven. And that was my first kind of exposure to this idea of truth. This idea of truth that exists in mathematics that doesn't exist anywhere in the world around us. So it's very hard to say that anything in the world around us is true or not true. Even science is just coming up with models, but mathematics gives you this access to this world where as long as your world is consistent, then the things that are happening are true in some sense, and that I found to be really, really beautiful. I also started learning geometry and had all these connections between these magnets and geometry, and also strangely, these magnets and number theory had a lot of connections too, and I came to understand all these different things, and I got really into by heart videos. Has anyone seen by heart videos? No? Okay, if you haven't, go home, look up by heart on YouTube. Huge plug, she's amazing. She basically does these videos that showed me the connection between all these different areas of geometry and mathematics that are amazing, and she presents them in an unbelievable way. And that kind of made me understand what I loved about maths. I then did a research scholarship at Melbourne Uni over a summer. And I was trying to work out who I wanted my lecturer to be, and one of my friends had seen some things that I'd built out of these magnets, and he said, you know that there's like a mathematical artist who works at Melbourne University. And I was like, what's a mathematical artist? That doesn't exist. And he said, you should meet this guy. So I went and I met someone called Henry Segerman, who is an amazing person and a mathematical artist. It is a thing that exists. Walking into Henry's office was like walking into this like world that I didn't know existed, but I wanted to live in. It was full of all these 3D printed surfaces and puzzles and games and all sorts of things to do with the creative side of mathematics. And over that summer, I worked with him on a research project, and he basically said, "Oh, you're interested in these magnetic spheres? Why don't you do your research project on them?" So we tried to come up with a model for what you can and can't build out of these spheres, and ended up doing a research project on that, ended up later publishing a paper on that, and also even building some mathematical artworks out of those walls that were taken to some international exhibits at the Bridges Mathematical Art Conference, which is a thing. Mathematical art is a thing. There's like a mathematical music night and mathematical poetry and theatre and all sorts of different things. It's amazing. So when I got to the end of my degree, and this thing happens with maths where basically every year you kind of lose the lowest, like let's say it's like the bottom 20% or something drop out every year. So from year 11, 12, uni, you keep getting the bottom group dropping out. And I got to the end of my degree and I kind of realized that it was my stop. I was like, oh yeah, this is where I get off the bus. I'm now in that like bracket. I don't continue with the research thing. I realized then that I wasn't such a good addict because I won't work hard enough to get my next fix. But I still had this deep love of maths. And what I realized in telling this story is that it's really a story of influences, of the people who have influenced me. And the people who kind of facilitated those moments for me and that learning for me. And I think that's kind of what's taken me forward to the next step, because what I realized is that I want to facilitate those moments for other people. I think mathematics is an area that other people don't experience it necessarily the same way. They haven't had access to those moments. But I have because of the people around me showing me that beauty in mathematics and that truth in mathematics. And that's what's kind of led me into this education field. So that's what's led me to kind of work for Mathletics, where I was making games and videos to teach maths. It's what took me to ScienceWorks, where I now present and have like this super, super fun job where I'm talking to people about science all the time. What's led me to want to do mathematical artworks, and I'm trying to write maths workshops, and it kind of inspires all these things that I do, wanting to be able to kind of share those moments with other people so that I can share what I love, basically. Thanks.